everybody. Welcome back. It's another episode of Let's Be Real. I'm Tara.
And I'm Sheri.
And we are two LCSWs in South Florida, figuring it out. Just talking it out, finding problems. Maybe we solve one or two one of these days.
That's right. There's a lot of problems, so we're finding a lot of things.
Yeah. And the more we explore, I guess the more we find. If we go looking for problems, we find them, don't we?
Absolutely. But you know what? I don't think I'm looking under any rocks. I think that they're all like right out there for everybody to see.
I agree. Yeah. We're not discovering something that no one else has. We're just going to put this out on the air for everybody else to observe. And hopefully as a consumer, if you're a consumer of your own mental health care, you have some solutions for us, or maybe you want us to shine light on the problems that you see that we haven't touched on yet. So I'm going to do something a little different right now. I'm going to plug our socials now. Okay. So as you're listening, everybody, just go ahead and, pull over if you're driving. Don't open Instagram on the road. Don't open TikTok on the road. Tell your friends, tell your people. We're on all social media platforms: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Let's Be Real, Sheri and Tara. And then our Gmail, which is always open for you guys to interact with us, is Let's Be Real with Sheri and Tara @gmail.com. So I want to plug that early so you guys don't get bored of us halfway through the episode and decide not to hear what we have to say and how to contact us.
Right. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe.
Oh, Sheri's been practicing.
I've just listened to a few in my life.
And if you really want to help us out, guys, subscribe and follow the podcast wherever you listen to the podcast. So that way it automatically downloads. It gives us all of those sweet, sweet points for us to reach our goals, to be able to reach out to more people. So if you're not spreading the word, this is how we get to spread the word, is just by you following and rating us too. So on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you consume your podcasts. But to get into the show, I had a little bit of a surprise question for you, Sheri.
Okay, surprise me.
It's not that daunting. It's just something I'm very curious about.
Okay.
And since you were my supervisor, mentor person, I want your wisdom.
Feel so special.
You should. I paid you a lot of money. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I paid you the least amount of money to supervise me, minus it being free with or a part of my benefits package of being a provider somewhere. Anyway, I got a couple of emails in the past month or so about becoming a divorce mediator. And I guess they look for social workers or mental health professionals to help provide that service. And I know it's a tuition based. It's not like a free CEU situation. You're definitely paying for it.
For sure.
And I'm very curious. I saw that there were dates all throughout the calendar year in different cities and all this stuff. And I'm very curious about it. I already don't do well with conflict. So this is the big pull away from me to do it. Mm-hmm. But there's a very sexy appeal to how much you can get paid per session to do it. And that's drawing me in real quick. So I'm curious if you have any insight as to what that's about, or if you know anything about it.
Oh, yeah. I've done it, right? I followed the email and I followed the breadcrumb trail, and that's where I went.
You didn't ask anybody like I'm asking you about this?
No, I called the person who sent the email and I found out more information. And so I did that training. I also went the next level of doing the training to be a Florida Supreme Court certified mediator.
Oh, okay. And that's what it is. It's a certification.
Right. Okay. So the email that you got, which I'm sure any LCSW in the country or any licensed version of a social worker or mental health professional has gotten that same email, right? Because the one that one, they're teaching you about how to do divorce mediation without lawyers. So it's called pro se. But what they're doing is giving you a lot of information. And when you leave, you're like, legal information? Legal information, a lot of understanding why we don't need to involve attorneys in law. Why you don't need to involve attorneys in divorce.
Okay.
And so they're looking for people like social workers or mental health therapists because of that relationship component, right? And
okay.
So that's why I was excited about it. The idea of making good money, not seeing the same person more than once. Sounded very appealing to me too, right? And then I learned that in the state of Florida, you really need, it's not required, but you really need that certification. So that first one doesn't give you that. So the one that I did second gave that to me, but it didn't end up being my niche. It would have been something that, I ended up realizing that I prefer to have the same client and work through and follow through something. So, I'm
fine with touch and go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. It sounds good, right?
I wonder.
But there's a lot of conflict. And again, I think I've said that before, that conflict is hard for me.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to feel like I got something accomplished. So it doesn't mean that it can't happen. And that's, in my own divorce, that's what I did. We went through mediation. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was amazing that I had learned that prior to getting divorced. It worked out perfectly.
You got your certification before you got divorced.
Yeah, before I even knew I was getting a divorce, right?
Gotcha.
It actually worked out really well for me.
This wasn't some underlying, let me figure this out for myself. Wow.
No, it actually was very beneficial for me personally.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. And if I really had put the effort into it, I could have made a great career out of it. But that was just not for me. It doesn't mean that anybody else can't make that career. And I think that this brings up the subject of, what can a therapist do? What can a licensed professional of the mental health, right? Because we have licensed marriage and family therapist, you have a licensed clinical social worker, you have the licensed mental health counselor, right? So all of those, pretty much we do the same thing with different modalities and different ideas, right? Same concept, but that's why they're looking for people like that, right? So, and we all kind of have some idea about how to deal with conflict, even if we don't like it in our lives, but we've been taught, right?
Yeah.
So that's why that's good. But there are so many opportunities. And I think so many people don't even realize that, wow, I could do something like that. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right.
And I actually know a few licensed folk that are going into law school and pursuing that track. Some for the mental health reasons and some just for this mental health wasn't the avenue they really want to pursue long-term. So they're switching to legal, which is interesting. But yeah, seeing the different avenues, especially in social work. I think I'm biased in this conversation just because that's what we do and that's what we studied. But there are so many avenues, with the VA, their preference is clinical social work. I think that's changing.
I haven't seen it to change. And I may be wrong. They do have psychologists.
Right.
But I think that from what I've seen, maybe I'm wrong, that they tend to use their clinical social workers more for the case management side.
Okay.
That's a little upsetting for me, but it doesn't mean that that's not what that's one of our core things, right? That we want to be able to provide that service and make sure people are getting what they need, which is what case management is, right?
Yeah, most of us as social workers are case managers at our core.
Right. That's what we do.
I open almighty Google in the middle of sessions all the time. Absolutely. And I'm like, we don't have to ask this question and leave it unanswered. We don't have to make this your homework. We can look it up right now.
Right. Exactly. Or I'll say, hey, there's no reason why you shouldn't know that this service is available to you. Right. So that's what we are. We're like a walking 211 or 411, I guess. In the state of Florida, we have 211, which is where you find services. Right. But when it comes to the idea of why do I have to go get a whole nother degree? My degree actually allows me, which is a master's in social work, right? Allows me to do a lot more things than just do therapy or case management. I wouldn't have to go back to be an attorney to go do mediation.
Right.
Because even the attorneys that do mediation, right? Because there are a lot of them that do that. They're not acting as an attorney. Yeah. And I wouldn't be acting as a therapist, right? You're supposed to say in this meeting, I am acting as a mediator only, right? Okay. I'm not giving you legal advice and I'm not giving you advice as a social worker or as a therapist.
There's no therapeutic process necessarily.
Exactly. Honestly, I use that in pretty much my whole life. So it's really hard to just, but I'm not going to say, I'm not going to sit down and have a session with them separately. Right. Yeah. And I'm not going to provide that service to my actual therapy clients. There's a line we can't cross. Right.
Mm-hmm. So what do social workers do? The answer is everything. Okay. Yeah. I suppose that's true. I mean, I'm thinking about when I was in the school system, most of my associates, most of the people I was friends with at that time were all social workers, and pursuing their licensure, as was I. And they all had such different backgrounds. We're talking about domestic violence and women's shelters. We're talking about mobile crisis, which is something I touched on, and it was not a fit for me. But everyone I knew that had done mobile crisis loved it. Like that intensive mental health work. And that work has never been appealing to me.
Right. And I think my eyes just went really big when you said that. Sorry. And the reason why is because it's not done, at least in our general area. I can't really speak for anywhere else. As being your clinical supervisor, when you were doing that, it kind of rubbed me wrong. Not that you were doing it, but that we can't fulfill the whole process, right? You can go assess them and then, okay, now we have to have a policeman come and assess them because they're going to be the one that transports and all the ugly that comes along with that, right? So that's the only reason why I have a hard time with that one. Sorry.
Oh, for sure. There was one time where we were called out basically for missing persons. We discovered it was a missing persons when we were assessing the situation. So we were talking to family members of I guess the identified client. And so then we are obviously calling the police because we're not investigating anything.
Right.
So that was a very interesting process. That was my first week on the job too.
Oh.
So I got
How exciting.
It was very exciting. I'm not going to lie. I learned a lot very quickly and I wasn't by myself yet either. So most of the time we try to go in pairs.
Right.
Especially if we're not calling on law enforcement help at the beginning of the call. That was in the middle of the call. We were calling on our support. Right. But it was a very interesting experience. I can see why it's appealing to a lot of people. It's very exciting. It's very thrilling. And a lot of those cases, you can clearly see the benefits of your work in front of you too.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot more in crisis than in crisis counseling or dealing with that is not just about Baker acting.
Right.
So I guess that's where I get stuck in that side. But
no, there's a lot of times where we would sit down with somebody and they would say, I didn't realize strangers like you guys would care so much. And I mean,
what a nice thing to hear. I mean, I know that's sad and good at the same time, right? Like thinking that other people don't care is sad, but knowing that people recognize that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And people are intuitive, right? We have a lot of people we work with that are like, Tara, Sheri, like I see that you're actually listening and you're actually tuning. Like I'm not just paying you after this session and then you forget all about me. Like we are absolutely tuning into you and your story. And that's, I mean, not to get sappy. That's what keeps it going, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. Me too. Yeah.
So all my clients listening, you can suck up to me and tell me that I'm helping. And it's right here.
You get the feels.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. But it's true. I do.
Yeah.
I have a lot of love for them. It's awesome. I want to do a whole episode on this at some point, or at least one episode on substance abuse too and addiction treatment. Because that's a whole field. And now we're entering into the new diagnosis with the DSM of the gaming addiction, right?
Oh, yeah. Wow. I know a lot of people who are going to be on that one.
I'm so glad I don't work with kids anymore.
Well, I could think a lot of grown men too.
Yes. But imagine like working with parents that are like, my kid this, my kid that, I heard about this new diagnosis. Here you go. We already figured it out. I'm like,
oh, I know. Right. Other than the fact of just being a teenager and all the craziness that goes on there too.
Right. Or like educating parents on the fact that your trash doesn't get taken out because they would just rather be doing anything else. And that's,
of course, right,
very reasonable behavior for most of us, but especially teenagers, to not recognize the consequences of not taking it out. Absolutely developmentally appropriate.
Absolutely. Because to them, there's no real consequence other than the fact that you're going to be mad at them, right? Or they are going to have a consequence right there, but they don't care.
Right. And they're like, there must be something wrong with them. No, there's nothing wrong with them. Same thing for you. Like the consequence of getting fired may not matter for a lot of people to not go to work. Right. So we all have to learn our natural consequences, and you're learning your teenagers.
Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah.
But lots of avenues for us to kind of sit in and work in professionally. And I think again, I'm very biased with social work. We even have a different exam. Right. The other. Exactly. I think all of us have different exams.
We all have different exams. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But ours incorporates so much more than just mental health. Mm-hmm. Right. And actually the mental health portion of it is actually kind of small.
It is.
Compared to the system approach and a lot of other things, right? That you're like, what does that have to do with anything?
And our coursework looks incredibly different in our master's program. So how much theory and policy we're learning, we learn a lot about policy as social workers. We basically become mini lobbyists.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do here, right? Like if you know somebody as a listener, if you know somebody that is in the position to make some change in the state of Florida or nationally, we want to hear from you.
Oh my gosh, right? Yes.
We want to know, like, who do we bring this information to? Because we have a lot of people who are giving us information, a lot of people who are excited about the idea of change. Mm-hmm. I think that we're ripe and ready for that. Like we are so ready for it. And I did just read, and I don't know if it was a lady from our past episodes that she posted about, I think it was her, that said we're 48th in the country, right? In how much we spend per person for mental health. It's kind of sad, right? We're a huge state and we have a lot of people.
We have a lot of people. We have a lot of new people coming in every day. And we're already topping the headlines, y'all. Florida Man is
a real thing.
Is a whole category. It's a whole subreddit called Florida Man. My best friend in Texas sends me stuff all the time. Like this y'all? Sure is.
This y'all, yeah.
Sure is. It's us.
Yep.
We're here running that game.
That's what we're here for.
We're not proud of it.
Well, we have what's called in the sunshine law, right? So we like to air our dirty laundry. It's part of our laws, actually, that say that Florida, we're allowed to let everybody know about this. So that's why Florida Man exists, because we're allowed to, because Florida wants to say we're wide open.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons.
I'm here debating on if that's a good or bad thing.
It's not, I don't know that it's good or bad. It just is.
I'm thinking about it. I'm personifying it as if it's a client sitting in front of me telling me way too much in the first session.
It is.
There's no such thing as telling me too much, but when you're oversharing in the first session, we're like, we're tuning into that. We're like,
right. Or you're on a first date and you're
first date.
Yeah. Yes. Florida is the first date TMI, right? That's what we are. We got too much information and we're going to give it all out.
I have a client that's going to appreciate this story. Florida is the first date 14 beers in.
Oh, for sure.
Going in.
Yes, we are.
Going in on how you should be, how they should be, what's going on. Oh,
yes.
Conspiracy theorists.
Oh,
we are that state.
We are
that state.
We're a lot of stuff. Wow. Lot.
I have no idea where I wanted to take this, but now I'm just reflecting a lot.
That's okay.
On my choices that got me here. I was not born and raised in Florida, y'all. I made this choice.
I was, so I didn't really have a choice. Thanks a lot, Mom and Dad.
You're choosing to stay.
That's right. I'm stuck here. Well, there's so many good things and so many bad, The weather for most of the year makes up for that. And what else? The no income tax for Florida. That's
beautiful.
But anyway, that's somebody else's podcast. But
Florida Man podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up. I don't know if I just plugged somebody's podcast.
I'm sure we did. If not, I'm sure we have lots to tell you. But that's probably all confidential from our clients.
I think it is.
Okay. So one of the things is I've spoken to many people, including one of our sound engineers here, that has said, I would have loved to be a social worker or a therapist, but you know what? My parents told me I would make no money. So, well, that may be true depending upon where you stay.
Sure.
Right? Depending upon what your passion is and where you want to put it and what you want to do with it. Right. But every every career, every degree, every whatever, every profession has a certain level of, I got to get to that. Right. So when you get to the master's level of social work, you're done, my friend.
Yeah.
You have 2 years and you can to work on, well, you have more than that, but you can do it in 2 years to get your license.
Yeah. In the state of Florida, at least.
In the state of Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you are at your, what we call the decapitation. Right?
Is that what we call it?
That's what we call it. That's what we call it. Sometimes we feel like we have been decapitated. But the difference is a psychologist, they have to go get their doctorate, right? We don't have to do that.
That's true.
Right? They have to get their doctorate and then they have to sit for a test.
Right. Our peak is our licensure.
Right.
And there's PhDs in social work. That is a program that you can get.
Yes.
But that's more for research and teaching.
Right. That's a whole nother level that,
yeah.
God help me if I had to go back to school. I don't know if I would survive.
I love the idea of it more than
I don't like any of it.
I like being a student.
Good for you.
I won't be ready for another 20, 30, 40 years to do that.
Well,
I'm going to ride this out as long as I can.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there are so many levels, and I do have people that will say to me, you know what, I really want to do what you do. So I'm going to go get my degree in psychology. No, don't do that. Because then again, you're on a different path.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that that's not a good start.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get your bachelor's in social work, which I did not do.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It's so much easier to then go get your master's.
You did criminology, right?
Criminal justice and legal studies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I did psychology.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So I should have smacked you then.
But I didn't. But I the ripe age of 18.
Right? Who knows? Nobody tells you.
You want to hear what I wanted to be when I was 18?
Oh, I want to hear what you wanted to be when you grew up.
School, and then they wanted me to declare my major right then and there. I wanted to be a sports and entertainment agent.
Oh, look at how convenient that was.
That's where I was going.
Look at you, right in that field now.
I was watching Entourage like it paid me. The HBO show Entourage.
That's great.
With Jeremy Piven's character, Ari Gold. He was a sports agent. And for some reason, that was appealing to me. He has a massive temper problem in that show. That is not telling of me. So therapist.
You just wanted to therapize him. That's really fun.
It is, right?
You wanted to get down to his
I was just
issues.
trying not to align myself with that.
Okay,
I'm
good.
way too, hence me not being an agent. I'm too passive for that. I'm too much of an empath, I think, for that. I'm not going to tell people what to do. And that's basically what agents do.
Right.
Is they make recommendations and all that. And I'm like, I still don't hate that work. I mean, it's
I
very
had Jerry
interesting.
Maguire show me the money in my mind right now.
That's a good one.
Okay.
That's a really good one too. And it's still very appealing work to me, but I'm not going back to school.
Well, but you're in a different, you're still getting to work with athletes.
I am.
Very different role.
I made it happen for myself.
Yeah.
I made it all fit the way it needed to fit. So, hey, things happen for a reason. But yeah, it's when I was sitting, I had to go to Florida Atlantic University to take my second attempt at psychopathology for my license because what I took at Boston University didn't qualify with the state of Florida. They didn't like I don't think I actually took psychopathology. That's why they didn't like it.
They didn't like the title, right?
Yeah, it was called something else.
A problem.
It was called something else, and it didn't emphasize the DSM enough in the syllabus.
Okay.
So whatever. It actually helped me. Me taking that FAU class is probably what helped me pass my exam the first time.
Right.
I got very lucky. But when I sat in that class, it was like a Tuesday evening, like 6 to 9 p.m. class. And most people were just transitioning, had just graduated from FAU with their bachelor's in social work and were already halfway through their master's because of how accelerated it is when you have your BSW to go to your MSW.
Right.
So fast.
Right. That's why I'm always trying to tell people, listen, but they get hung up on that word social work. And they're like, they're like, oh, but that doesn't mean you're a therapist. I'm like, yes, it does.
Or it can.
Well, I don't have to be, right? But that allows me to be, right? The clinical part of my, licensed clinical social worker, right? And so people choose also not to go down the route of getting their license because they think that license is only to become a therapist. And that's kind of the way it's geared when you're doing your license, when you're working towards it, because they want you to have that experience. But again, without that, like doors close that could be opened for you. So there are so many things. And I get the craziest emails and offers based on just the fact that I am licensed.
You did warn me about that happening when you were supervising me. You were like, as soon as you get licensed, you're going to get so many unsolicited emails and recruiters just trying to bring you into their practice.
Right.
And it's happened. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, there's so many options, there's forensic. So working with the court system, which sounds so much more sexy than it is. And it's, it's not pretty. But anyway, again, for somebody else that might be exciting, but I guess it depends on what role you end up actually doing. But you could work for the FBI. You can work for the military as a civilian. You don't have to go to boot camp, Right.
Well, if you have your master's, you don't have to, you go to officer boot camp. As soon as you have, I'm sorry, not even your master's. If in the military, if you have a 4-year degree,
right,
you go straight into an officer role.
Right. But this is working as a civilian and you get really good pay.
Yes.
So,
well, they have social workers in the military as well.
Right.
So you could be in the armed forces or you can be a civilian providing services.
Exactly. Right.
Absolutely.
So there's different options, right?
Yeah. There's contract work, right?
Yes.
I think that's how you put it to me.
Well, and actually, because you're working for another company, but you're, so you don't actually work for the military, but you're working as a contractor, which a big portion of people are part of that. Sorry, let me get my beauty.
We're adjusting our headphones.
So sorry. As you see me doing it the whole time now, my glasses, I'm just a hot mess.
It's great.
Anyway, so
you never would have forgiven me if your hair was sticking out and I just got to look at it.
Like, I'm going to smack you.
I'm going to pick this clip just for Sheri.
Thanks a lot.
She punches me in the throat.
Right. That is the first time I ever heard somebody say that about punching someone in the throat. I thought, wow, that sounds so cool. Isn't that terrible? Because it's just such an aggressive term, but
it rolls off the tongue a little too easy though.
I know. Agreed. I agree. It's such an aggressive term, but it really gets the point across of what it is you're feeling. Right. And we're all about expressing our feelings. Right?
Aren't we? This podcast does not condone violence in any way, shape, or form for legal and ethical reasons.
No Taras were harmed in the making of this podcast.
Sheri was not pettied to death by Tara's attitude.
There you go. That's right. Yes. So if we go back to the idea that there's all kinds of options. So if you want to work with people, don't give up the idea of a social worker. If that word sounds like you're going to work for Medicaid, the Medicaid office, or you're going to work for Child Protective Services. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that a huge portion of those people are not actually social workers. So in the state of Florida, the term social worker is a protected term. So you cannot use that term if you're not, or that title if you don't have a master's in social worker.
I think it's nationally protected.
Oh, it is. Okay.
I believe.
Thank you very much.
Well, don't thank me yet. Please interact with us, y'all, and start correcting us because I would love that.
Yeah, for sure. I need to know, am I giving, because, again, I'm an expert in only so much.
Only myself.
For sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So that term, so people that are working in those entities have other degrees. I'm not putting them down, but that's not just what a social worker does.
Oh, it's just a stereotype.
It's a stereotype.
It's this perception that social workers come to your house, knock on your door with a clipboard and a lanyard and take your kids away from you.
Exactly.
And I don't know a single social worker that's actually done that.
Right.
Personally.
Right. I do know one. And actually she's somebody that I'm supervising for her license right now. Okay. But she's amazing. And if more people were like her in that position, maybe or people that ran that program, ran DCF, the Department of Children and Families in Florida, were like her, and understood what the system's doing wrong, we would probably have an excellent system in the state of Florida.
Sure.
Because there's so many of them that, God bless them, they're not trained. And I'm not saying that you have to be a social worker to be trained, but you got to be trained in something.
Absolutely.
And they throw you in there and then give you 100 cases and you got to determine whether someone's safe or not safe. That's it.
Well, this appeals to the same conversation about social work lining up with our police force too, right?
Yes.
And having crisis response and being responsive and preventative rather than reactionary.
Yes.
And so the same thing is happening with our police officers, right? We're going to throw them out with academy training or whatever training they do get, minus the crisis stuff. And then they're going to go out into the world and handle that. Like, that's not fair for anybody.
Right.
Just same thing with social workers, giving them 100-person caseload and sending them out into the world with just the bare bones training. Like, we can all do better.
Absolutely. And I think that's why not only for the police department, but agency jobs or when you're working for Medicaid, we're providing, like, every state is providing a service through Medicaid, right? That people who cannot afford for that service desperately need, right? And so we're providing it at a bare bones basic style because, again, they're getting paid poorly.
Yep.
Plus, you got managed care, like another company coming in and controlling how much can be done. And so you stripped any real service out of there because now, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And then, so nobody wants to take it. And it's so hard to get to be able to accept it, to become a provider. So it's a shame. But anyway, that's why so many of these systems are a mess. Anyway,
they're not managed properly. No, I like it. This is the tangent that we love to get on. And I'm here for it. But I think, and we haven't even come close to summarizing all of the roles that we can fill.
Oh, right. Exactly.
You and I have both worked in school systems, both worked with kids.
Right. I've worked in medical social work. I've worked in hospice. I have not worked in an actual hospital, but hospital social work. They have travel social work, like you have for a travel nurse, same thing.
But that's usually medical social work.
Right?
I found that out the hard way. When I was like, this money looks great, I'm going to do it. Like, where's your experience? Oh, it's not there.
Right. Exactly. Whoops. Right. Cause that's a whole nother thing. Right now I have to learn how to deal with the hospital systems and then where am I going to transfer these people? And, it's a whole plan of care that we're not used to.
Yeah. And then we have our, for kids too. I don't know if it's the same acronym, if I can even remember it in the state of Florida as it is elsewhere, but basically inpatient psychiatric care.
Yes.
So that's SIPS, statewide inpatient psychiatric.
Oh, okay.
So that's for kids. I know you've worked in a facility like that. I'm fascinated by those facilities.
I am too. And I wish that goes straight back to like, that's where I started in a residential treatment facility for adolescents and children. And if there weren't things going on there that were unethical.
I'm glad I didn't name them because I almost did.
Yeah. And unsafe.
Yeah.
That would have been I would have stayed there forever.
Really?
Yeah. Just the hard thing is to watch people hurt kids, you know, and when you complain, they're like, oh, it's okay. No, it's not okay. Right. When you're jacking kids' arms up to their head.
Oh, hell no.
And again, you're dealing with somebody who's aggressive or having a mental breakdown or they're in a psychotic episode. And what are we going to do to hold them and keep them safe? But there's got to be, we have techniques and things, but people don't follow them. They get angry. They take it personally.
I was just going to say, it becomes like some personal attack when someone's having a real episode.
Well, and that's exactly what's happening with the police force, right?
Yeah. Those
that are reacting that way, they're not reacting most of the time to what that person is doing. They're reacting to their anger that they did something in the first place. They're reacting to something else. And then they just can't stop for whatever reason. Those people have major anger issues and they shouldn't be working with people.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean all people that work in those jobs, whether it be police or the people who are on the units with those kids or adults. It doesn't mean that all of them are that way. But when we see the ones like on television and the awful things that happen, we paint them all with the same brush, right?
Absolutely. We're talking about social work stereotypes to begin with. I think the police get the same rap. And I think I hear this a lot when I tell people, or at least when I was in the schools, I got it a lot. of, oh, I can never do what you do, which is how I feel about nursing, like medical hospital nursing. Like that's something I feel like I could not do for one reason or another. It just seems like very intensive work that would burn me out within a couple of shifts. But I actually haven't heard anyone say that about the police workforce. So maybe there's that awareness that deserves to be there of, I know I'm not capable of police work, at least not street work. There are plenty of people that have seen me and they're like, you would be a great detective. I was like, I don't know where you got that from. Thank you.
I would love to be a detective. I want to find out your shit. I want to know. I want to know what the hell is happening.
That's the difference between you and I too, because you said that you're a detective when it comes to mental health work. When someone's not giving you all the details, I'm like, nope. I'm going to work with whatever you give me. And when you don't like the results, you can blame your damn self.
I like that. That's good. Well, the thing is that it's not that I'm trying to change them. I just want to dig. I want to find more. Right. And I'm not going to go to outside sources, but I'm going to ask you like, hey, come on, let's go further.
Fair.
Right.
That's fair.
So I'm the one who, if somebody's got a friend who thinks that someone's cheating on them or whatever, we're gonna all get in the car and follow somebody or find something, right? So that's why I went to school to be in criminal justice. I had that fascination of that, right?
That's actually a really good I don't know how I didn't make that connection before, but yeah, that really caters to what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I'm really excited about like why people do things and what we can do to figure out all that, like investigate further or find the actual truth, which I feel like doesn't really happen on a regular basis.
That's fair.
So,
yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I would do it any better. I'm just saying, like that's kind of the way it is. But people who tend to be in that kind of field, they're doing it for many different reasons, right? So I can't speak for them, but the idea of that power and control is very alluring. And when you get into that, it's really hard to let go of that.
And I'm just a hippie therapist that just wants to give the world a big old hug. And that's why I love my sound baths and meditation.
Right. That's why I wouldn't have survived. I had this idea that I wanted to work in the juvenile justice system. Yes. They would have eaten me alive. And so then, yes, I have a certain way about me that I can get away with certain things. But yeah, I don't know. I think that would have been the end of me.
It's a good point because I work really well with those attitudes and those egos too. Like I'm not warm and fluffy when people are challenging me. I challenge them right back.
Yeah.
I worked with teenagers for Lord knows how long.
Right.
And, I can handle getting cussed out by just about anybody. Teenagers have a special arsenal of cussing adults out. Yeah. But I didn't get it that often. But that was fine. I wasn't like, give me a hug, it'll be fun. No, I was giving you attitude because we're gonna tough it out. And that was, the school I was at that got you respect, to be honest.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I was being authentic every time. Right. So I didn't really deserve to get
have to be
out.
Right. You have to be.
They read right through you.
For sure. Yeah. And when I worked in the residential, my unit was the middle school boys. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you.
Oh, they be reading right through you.
Oh, for sure. They're like, Miss Sheri, what are we doing today? And I'm like, all right, well, we're going to survive today. That's what we're going to do. We're going to learn survival today. Right. But we always did crazy things. And I just went with what they were interested in.
Right.
It's really hard to find what a whole group of boys is interested in. That they're all like on the same page.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, but
that's okay. That was my challenge for the day, like to challenge them in some way or another.
Right.
And not go in to try to talk to 14-year-olds or 12-year-olds about their feelings because they laugh at me.
Yeah. Like, here goes Miss Sheri with her bullshit again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I never scolded anybody for cursing. That's for sure.
I agree. This has been like a big disagreement when I was in the schools was, do you allow them to cuss? And first of all, there's research that says that cussing is very cathartic. So
fuck yeah.
Love it. And who am I to stop someone expressing themselves when they're in the middle of a story?
Right.
I'm not going to tell them, can you reword that? No. I'm going to let you vomit however those words show up. and I'm going to embrace them and love them how they show up.
Perfect.
Because that's who you are. And if you don't get this room to express that, you're going to tell Miss or Mr. What's his face that doesn't deserve to hear it.
Exactly.
Well, or maybe they do, but I don't want you to get in trouble.
Exactly.
So.
Let's keep it here. Let's keep it here. Yes. They have to have a safe place for it. So
exactly.
I'm very safe when it comes to that.
Exactly.
As long as you're not cursing at me.
Yes.
I'm okay.
That's what I would always say. If you're using your words to hurt somebody, I'm going to remind you that you're using them to hurt somebody.
Exactly.
But if you're using it to just express a story and you want to be very flavorful with it,
I like that. That's
you just discovered the word fuck. Like, you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, enjoy.
All right. It'll lose its meaning soon enough.
Probably not, but that's okay.
At least with the flair that
that's
goodness.
true.
Like the
That's
first
true.
time they discover this word. I mean,
Yeah,
I was that way when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too.
I guess it hasn't worn off now, has it?
For me, it hasn't either. Well, it's just more, okay, I'll control it a little bit.
A little. Yeah. No, I can keep it in some sessions. I don't curse at all. And some clients, they get the best.
Yeah, they get the best of me. Okay. So if we're looking for people to tell us things, what do we want to hear?
I really want to get on this thing about couples therapy. I'm so freaking curious about that. So people who have been in couples therapy, couple therapists.
Yeah.
I sent you that podcast yesterday that I really want to like dive into that because she has similar philosophies to her. So before we plug her, I'm really curious about that. What else? What else do you think?
Yeah. You know what? I think a lot of people have been wanting more about couples too,
I think
right?
so too.
Yeah. So I think if we explore that avenue, and then also I would like to have Lady back on, and we're going to discuss more about what we can do with this system we have here. I would love to hear from people because I do see that people are listening from other states and other countries. And so tell us what it's like where you live, like what's working. And maybe we can use some of those ideas to bring to the people who can make the change.
Oh my gosh, yes. Here. And we can give our fresh eyes to things and policies that exist in other areas outside of Florida.
Right.
So
I know somebody's doing it right. Somebody's doing it right somewhere.
Usually it's Massachusetts.
Okay. All right. If you're in Mass, come talk to us.
Massachusetts, right? I've heard a lot of good stuff. I mean, I got my master's in Boston University, so they're talking about policy, and I'm the Floridian in the class being like, oh, that must be nice.
We don't do that.
We don't do that here. We don't give a shit.
Or are you doing it in a certain way in Germany, in Peru? I saw somebody that watched from Peru, and someone that is Canada and Mexico. Like what are you guys doing? Like, what is it that, what are your therapists? Because we're all over the world. So
Canada's one I'm very, very interested in because of their system of medicine and how different it is from ours. And I would love to not destigmatize, I don't think that's the right word, but demystify the idea that in Canada, their socialized medicine means that you have to wait 4 months to see a therapist. Yeah. They still have private providers, and they're still more affordable than here.
Jim Carrey says something about that in one of his, he's talking to, he's being interviewed, and he's talking about how it's really not as bad as what people are saying, and that they have great healthcare. So I'm just saying, listen to Jim Carrey, see how that is.
Yeah. Friend of the show.
Yeah. He's my friend. Yeah.
We go way back.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps another episode for us. Thanks so much for listening. As always, we can't wait to interact with you guys and bring you more content that you want to hear. Give us ideas, give us some guidelines, because you're the ones that make us keep talking at each other.
Yes.
Otherwise, we would just do it back at happy hour like we were doing it before we started this podcast. So reach out to us, all of our socials at Let's Be Real Sheri and Tara. Gmail is Let's Be Real with Sheri and Tara at gmail.com. We want to hear from you. We are ready to interact with y'all. So send more stories. I'll post some more stuff on our Instagram and TikTok for you guys to interact with. And we will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.